Okay, good afternoon. It's really nice to see you all during this workshop. I will have a pleasure to continue the talk that Marcin presented about data management plans. So I will give you some practice tips, how to routine with your data, where to manage, where to store the data, and how to make your data fair. To deposit or not to deposit the data, I think this is old questions. We are now all on at the moment that we know that it's very important to share our data with other scientists and make it available for the whole community. Martin was mentioned about the data life cycle. Data life cycle illustrates the stage through which well-managed data passes from the inception of the research project to its conclusion. In the reality of science research, the stages do not always follow a continuous circle. Data management planning is the starting point of the data lifecycle. However, the plan should be revised often through the project to ensure proper data documentation and management. And of course, there is a lot of best practices how to do it, and there are also a lot of tools to help in this. Today, we will follow some of the stages of the data lifecycle. So the collection of the data, assure, which is close to the quality assurance and quality control of the data sets. Describe, so document the data content, character, and process. Deposit, where store the data, in which location, and where they could be accessed. Preserve, select the proper repository for our data and choose the proper formats. And discovery, so make the data available for the others that they can find them. But why we should share the data? Why do research sponsors encourage data sharings? Because sponsors have an obligation to maximize the investment of the research funds. Data sharing enhances the value of the research investment by enabling external reviewers to verify the project performance metrics and outcomes. This is not only increase the credibility of the data, but also spurs new research that can build upon the initial investment and advance the science rather than duplicate expenditures. The scientific community as a whole also benefits from sharing among researchers. Data sharing allows researchers to build upon another's work and to further rather than duplicate the science by exploring new findings or combining findings into meta-analysis that cannot be performed with individual data. In sharing data, the scientific community expands both individual perspectives and collective comprehensions. And finally, how does the independent research benefit from data sharing? When scientists share their data, they gain recognition as an authoritative source and respect as a wise investment for research funds. When data are exposed, feedback from the broader community can be used to improve the quality and presentation of the data. Shared data also allows to greater opportunity for data exchange and networking opportunities with peers and potential collaborators. Few years ago, there was a study computed on research articles which revealed something somehow shocking. Most of data we produce are quickly lost over the years. In particular, the authors have found out that whereas data for almost all studies published just 2 years before were still accessible, but chance of them being so fell by 17% per year. Availability dropped to as little as 20% for research from the first years. So why it is like that? One challenge was obviously to be able to recover the data. The authors have different problems with us when asked about it. They are somewhere on the hard drive, or some PhD students have them, or they are on some CD. Another challenge was simply tracking down authors and receiving a response, something at which the team was successful in just less than 40% of cases. The likelihood of being able to find a working email address even after an extensive online search declined by 7% per year. But the reason of the losing of data is many. The data is because of the natural disasters, storage failure, loss of the staffing competences, or loss of the institutional commitment. So it is important how and where we are storing our data. How it looks today, we have our data and hopefully also the metadata. If it's going to a paper, then it's obviously that the data are available in the cloud, online. But a lot of data are in some shelves, desks, or storage somewhere, then where it can be lost very, very fast. So if we will look on the engagement of of our work and data reusage, the engagement is dropping down after the fieldwork and after the publication of the data, and the reusage should slowly rise after publication of our paper. If we will store our data in the desk, the usage of the data will not increase as much as it could if we will share the data in proper, fair manner. So the ideal situation for future is that all our data and metadata will be available online in some repositories. But this is the ideal situation, how to reach this. Martin mentioned about the FAIR principles, and this is something that SIOS is promoting, and there is many international programs that promote FAIR principles for sharing the data and for the repositories. One of this project is NBFAIR, which SIOS is a partner in. So Martin presents you detailed information about F, A, I, and R, and we'll focus a little bit about each of this letter today. But our main topic is the data collection workflow. So going point by point by data collection, quality control, data documentation, and then the data publishing in the repository. Starting with the data collections, there is many protocols. Protocols and recommendations for the measurements of snow physical properties, the measurements of the cryosphere variables from Global Cryosphere Watch prepared by the World Meteorological Organization. There are publications like European Institute Snow Measurements, Practices and Purposes. So for the snow community, it's just very important just to choose the proper measurement protocol, the standard one. Why we would like to use the standard protocol? There is many standards. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to have the next standard that somebody will say, okay, but I will do it on my way because it's the best way. So the good idea is just make a good research, good searching of the standard protocols, and have an agreement about the protocol. And I will show at the end what we as a SIOS with our members we are trying to do through the core data to make some standardization of the measurements protocols for Svalbard. But this is the first step, and probably this is the easiest step in our data flow because there are already some standards that you can just choose and follow. But going into quality control and to how we are dealing with our data, here you see the data sets in Excel spreadsheet, that there is a location of the location and date information about the different cells with different formats. There is a different names of columns and different order of columns. So it's completely mess. If you will look here, this shows the same data entered in a way that would make it easy to understand and analyze. The data are not entered in separate blocks, arrayed in a single worksheet. They are entered in one table with columns defined by the variables date, site, and others. The columns of data have consistent types, and each column contains only numbers, dates, or text. There are consistent names, codes, and formats used in each column. For instance, all dates are in the same format, and there are no typos in the site names. And additionally, there are only numeric data in the weight column, so a statistic program or Excel could readily calculate statistics of this column. And preparing the metadata for this file would be also very straightforward. So also one of the good practice dealing with our data is to identify the missing value in our time series or description of the site. So use proper description when we are missing the information in the numeric fields. Use the proper description if you are missing the information in the text field. So this is something important that will help us to read the data after many years, and us help others to understand our data sets if we will not be able to inform them about the content. So the best practices in this, it's very important to organize data as a column along the dimension in spreadsheet. Enter header information as a key value pairs, include information on valid data records or missing data. Use descriptive column names, use descriptive file names, and we really recommend also to use the ISO 8601 formatting for dates. So it will be really useful for others, and it's also very important for machine-to-machine reads of the data sets. All our efforts could be validated, so we can do it manually in like in the Excel. We can use the tools for that, which are available in the internet. One of them is a dataset validation tool on SIOS webpage, where you can check the you can validate your NetCDF file. But going forward from collection of the data, measurements protocols, checking the quality of data, the next step in data documentation is the metadata. We need to prepare the metadata description and what is this. And the metadata is all around us. For example, in the MP3 players. For example, we have a card catalog that tell us more information than just the title of the music, who is the author, where it was published, from which collection is this. Another example of the metadata that we see in our daily life is the neutron and integrated information on food labels. We have information, the labels answer the questions such as what ingredients were used, who made the food, how many calories per serving. It's all the metadata, the same like information on books. But we have different types of the metadata. We have that discovery metadata, use metadata, and site metadata. Discovery metadata have basic information about where, by who data were collected, the period of the data sets, the licensing, the owners, in which repository they are. This is the information that allow the systems to connect between the data sets and harvest them. There is also the use metadata, which contain the actual content of data sets and how it's encoded. And here you can also have a free text to inform the users about the content of the information in the data sets. For the site metadata, it's rather about the facilities and where the data are collected. So it's not important for us at this moment. For us, the important is to discovery metadata, to allow people to search for data, to make the data findable. And important is also the use of metadata. But how makes a good metadata record? As you get started developing your metadata record, it's important that certain fields are used consistently. This means that some metadata fields require values and that are written the same way to aid in machine readable and discovery. For example, the publisher field should contain the standard form of your agency's or organization name. And for example, USGS, the name should be written at US Georgic server, not USGS. And there is many examples of that. Even if you will look into the SIOS data access portal, and you can find 2 or 3 names for the university in Tromsø, because in the data sets that we are harvesting, people are putting different name for that. And of course, you should also use as much as you can use the standards for the dates or for the keywords. So when possible, terms keywords should be drawn for tethers or keyword lists. The use of the authority files and standard vocabulary will help to make your data more discoverable, understandable, and interoperable. Make sure your reference the thesaurus used in your metadata record. And still, there are many metadata standards. So it's also important to choose one of them, not to create, as I said at the beginning, the new standards, but follow the standards that already exist. And for the SNOW community, I think that there are some very good metadata standards that can be used. Sorry. So going forward with the data documentation, we need to decide about the file of our portal, of our file format. We know how the data are organized. We know how to use them, but somebody will know about that after 10 or 15 years. Even if we will now look on our data for our master thesis or PhD thesis, if they are not organized in the proper way, we can lose a lot of time to go into details what is where. So it's important to have also a proper file format. It should be our open file format. There is some many standards, so it's the same like with the protocols or with the metadata. Choose the proper standard format, and also always use the ISO 8601 for data, as I mentioned before. It's very important to look also into self-describing data formats like NetCDF, which is more and more popular. They are very useful. All the information about the metadata are included into the file. And you can build services about this file format. You can download not the whole format, the whole file. You can download only the part that you are interested in. It's especially important for the long time series or the huge model results. So this is something what we should think about when we are thinking about the proper storage of our data. In the agenda for the white paper, there will be a recommendation for the proper formats that should be used by the SNOW community. Important part that was mentioned also by Martin is data documentation. Data may be protected by one or more intellectual property rights, and use of data requires a license for the owner of a repository license, owner from the data owner, or a repository license by the owner of the shared data. Data licenses preserve several unique licensing issues concerning data ownership and data usage. And as the author of your work, you can decide what others can do with the data set you are sharing, and also the conditions under which you are providing access to these materials. This is possible by giving your work the appropriate license. The license do not reduce, limit, or restrict any rights under acceptation and limitation of copyright. You are free to draw, of course, you are free to draw your own license, your own terms, but it's common to apply the pre-made license template. There are several options to choose from that, and for the material except the source code, the Creative Commons license mentioned by Martin are very good and most common choice, and it's also supported by the SIOS. But you should also remember about the NOLOD, which is Norwegian license for open government data. The Norwegian Ministry for Government Administration Reform and Church Affairs recommend all data owners in the public sector to use the license and accept that the majority of the Norwegian public sector open will be licensed under the NOLOD license. So going to our data collection workflow, we were talking about the data collection, quality control, and data documentation. So let's look on the last points related to the data publishing and long-term preservation. There is a many repositories, and the SIOS data management system is dedicated to harvesting information on historical and current data sets from collaborative, thematic, and institutional data centers, repositories, and making them available to users. Central access point, central data portal is linked to the repositories maintained by SIOS partners, which manage and distribute datasets and their associated metadata. Integrity of the information and harmonization of the data is based on international accepted protocols and standards. So we have this SIOS data access point through which you can have access to the datasets from many different repositories. And if you will go into detail in our description in the agenda for the future SNOW research, you will find some recommendation for the SNOW community. One of them is to use the repository that is connected to SIOS data management system. It's assured that your data are managed with the good, fair principles, and they are accessible by the community. And but to do it, you need to storage your dataset in some repository, and then you need to go into the details of each repository, which is proper for you. In the agenda for the future SNOW research, we present the several data repositories that manage with the SNOW datasets for Svalbard. So we can find there the description of these repositories and how they are following the FAIR principles. And of course, there are some recommendations which a good repository should follow. So to summarize a little bit this part, for the researcher perspective of data management or fair manage of your data, you should keep yourself organized, track your science process for reproducibility, better control version of your data, which is very important, and quality control for your data, control your data for more efficiently. And if you are going into what are the benefits for others and for you, you will avoid loss of your data if you will have a proper backups and store data in the open repository. It will be possible to others to reuse your data, and you will gain credibility and recognition for your work. The important part when we are thinking about the sharing the data, it's the ownership of data. We should remember that, of course, it depends on the contract between the funding agency and the institutions. But usually the ownership of the data lies with the institution, not with the individual scientists. So the institutions should prepare the data management plan, the data policy, how you should deal with your data. So if your data are well organized, documented, preserved, and accessible, you will have very good results. You will have a better quality of your data. You will be able to easily share with other scientists and save some cost. So, but how to follow this if we have so many data sets around ourselves? If you will look on the SIOS, we have different data sets like SIS report data, access call data, historic data. And it's a very long process to make all this data fair. So we are starting with the core of that. So we are starting with the SIOS core data. The SIOS core data have been defined to optimize the resources contributed by the SIOS research community. The core observational program of SIOS should provide the research community with systematic long-term observations, yet flexible enough to integrate upcoming new methods and research questions. SIOS measurements program and hence also core data should be continuously monitored. So it is something that we can start to work and expand expand the best practices to other data sets. The scientific optimization group and the task force defined criteria that the core data must fulfill. So this is the criteria of the scientific excellence. The core data should answer the key research questions, should be characterized by the essential climate variables and others. The core data should be available. The core data should be available through the SIOS data management system as soon as possible. If they are not available at this moment, they can be classified as SIOS core data candidates. And for the members' commitment, there should be more than 5 years of the commitment more than 5 years of the commitment to collect the data for the future, to have a long-term programs and be assured that the data will be delivered for the proper community. At this moment, SIOS defined 4 domains with the 55 variables classified as the SIOS core data. And the most important for our and for this meeting is that the variables that were that are collected as in the cryosphere domain. So you can see the list of the variables. For the snow, we have a snow depth, snow water equivalent, snow cover, and there will be also some additional variables like snow water area or firm that will be added to this list, and you will see the results of mapping. So who is collecting which of this data. So we are trying now to make this data as fair as possible and follow the best practices. All information about the core data you can find on our webpage. So we find the definitions result of our workshop, and new information will also be available there. There will be next steps in our process. We are supporting the transformation of the data to the core data to make them fair. We are supporting to standardize the measurements protocols, data protocols, and calibration. So we are going step by step. We choose the set of the variables, we choose the definitions that everybody agree on them, so we know what we are talking about. We are mapping where the measurements took place. Now we will be discuss about the common and standard measurements protocols, and then go step by step by the calibration, etc. So I'm not sure if you were informed, you were able to see during the workshop the information about the SIOS observation facility catalog, which allow you to have an overview about the snow measurements and snow research on Svalbard. You can easily search for, in the searching interface, you can search for the facility, for a risk number or institutions, but also you can search for the GC and the keywords. So in this case, I was searching for the snow depth in 2 links as a climate indicators and cryosphere. And I was able to find several points on Svalbard, which are already existed in our catalog. You will find the information there about the measurements, about period, about the instruments, about the contact persons. So of course, it depends on the inputs from our partners, but we are supporting and we are encourage our SIOS members just to give us information that could be uploaded to this catalog, and it is and it will be very useful for the whole community. Okay, I think that we are in time, so thank you very much, and